Hi guys, welcome back to tvOS Training, Swift 5 Fundamentals for Beginners. This is part 4, which is covering integers, floats, strings and booleans. So if we go to the playground here, we'll look at different data types. So for example, we'll start off with doubles. So doubles are basically decimal point numbers in Swift. For example, here you can see I've used 3.14, which is pi. And you can obviously manipulate this one because again it's a variable. As we saw in the last one, variables can be changed. If this was changed to a constant, then this would probably cause me an issue here. So let's keep that as a variable for now. And like before in the previous episode, we showed you how to print the variables or constants. So you can print a double as you would normally with any other value. And you can also print the double value to a certain number of decimal places. So for example here, I've put 0.2f, which will print a double over here in a second, to two values. So it's rounded it up from 7.5555 to 7.56. And you can change this as you'd like, so you can have just one decimal point, or you can print it with no decimal points if you want from here. So this can be quite handy if you want to round up numbers in kind of like a calculator app or something like that. Let's leave that as 3 decimal points for now. So that's doubles there. So in order to print that there as a string, we've used the string literal. So basically we're saying it's a string, but the format contains a double. And that's how we do that there. And so we basically convert the double into a string to reduce the amount of decimal places. Then we move on to integers, and integers are sort of single sort of whole numbers basically, no decimal points, just whole numbers to be used. So for example here I've put 6, this changed to 7, so again you can put these like any other value. But once you've declared an integer or a double, you can't change that to another value like a string or a double. So here I've tried to change my example int to 3.14, and you'll see again that will cause an issue with the compiler. And I can't put just pi on its own as a string because that will also cause an issue, saying that I cannot assign value of type string to int, which basically is saying once it's been declared as an int, it's always an int. So unlike with variables and constants, obviously the constant you can't change it, a variable you can change it, but also with a variable you have to stick to the type that you've originally defined. So if you start something off as a double, it's got to stay as a double. If you start something off as an integer, it's got to stay as an integer, and so on. However, you can assign an integer value to a double because it's still a decimal point number. It will accept whole numbers, but this would just be, for example, you define it as 12, but it would actually be 12.0 because it's a double. And you can also combine these numbers together for equations, which is known as an arithmetic operator. So, for example, here I've got a variable which is integer 1, which is a value of 1, and integer 2, value of 2, and I've created this variable here, addition, which adds together 1 and 2 and creates a new variable based on the answer. So as you can see over here, that variable now has a value of 3. And then you can also do this for subtraction, so you can do integer 2 minus integer 1, so 2 minus 1 is 1. You can use this for multiplication, so you can times the numbers together. You can also use this for division. So when you're wanting to combine two numbers using these arithmetic operators, the plus and minus is pretty standard, but to times numbers together use the star in Swift, and to divide numbers from each other use the forward slash, the similar one to you use for commenting, but you just use one. So you can also combine an int and double value in the same equation, but you have to make sure that you cast it as a so that they are similar data types on either side. So for example, integer 2 is a int, and example double is a double, so I have to turn the integer 2 into a double in order to times it by another double. Like, you can't mix them together, you have to cast one to the other. We'll go into casting a bit more in a later episode. And it's the same the other way around, so if I just wanted to use the int values of this, I could then do integer 2 times the int value of example double, and we'll run these together. So you can see that even though these look like they're the same equation, they actually come out with different values because obviously doubles can handle decimal points and integers cannot. So yeah, as it says here, when casting an integer from a float value, you might notice there's a lack of precision when it comes to rounding up or down. Because strictly it just cuts off the decimal points normally. So it could be like 3.5 and that then becomes 3, which should become 4. Another data type is strings, which is something we looked at a bit earlier, which is just basically literal text is put into a string, and to define a string you just literally use these quotation marks and type in the middle whatever you like in terms of text. This will also contain numbers, and it will also contain decimal point numbers as well. Anything that's contained within these 2 quotation marks is defined as a string. So this example string here, hello everyone. This could be for a label or a button or a title of a page. Basically, anywhere you see text in an application, it's using a string. So you can combine strings. So I've defined 2 strings here, string 1 and string 2. And we can combine them together by just using a plus there. So that creates a new variable called final string, which is a combination of these 2 strings. And I'll just run that there to show you. So we see 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can also reverse a string as well. So this basically here is printing a string that's been casted, and it's reversed the string. So this has created this reverse here creates a character array, which has then been reversed, and I will show you the printout here. So it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 backwards. So 4, 3, 2, 1 completely backwards. And the reason it's been casted is because this has been broken down to a character array, and a character is simply one alphanumeric character in a string. And technically a string is an array of characters together. So you have to cast it back to individual characters, create an array of them, put them backwards, and then cast them to a string in order to print them out in this window. So as we know that strings are an array of characters, you can also pluck out the individual characters of a string, like so. So this will basically pick out the first, which is 0, and that's something that you kind of have to get your head around as a beginner to programming, is rather than counting like normally like 1, 2, 3, 4, with arrays you use 0 as 1. Oops, sorry. So 0 is 1, 1 is 2. So in terms of objects, 0 is the first object, and then you count up from there. So you can see here the 0, so this is the first one, so that would be the O from 1. And the 9th one would be the H from 3, and then 17th would be the last value, which is 4. And we will look into arrays a bit more in later sessions. Then we have Booleans, which are basically, Booleans can be true or false, and they're quite handy to have as sort of flags in an application. So this example here we've set as true. So it's good to basically check if an action has been completed or not. They're very, very easy to use and straightforward to set. So for example here, we could have something like if you had an application that required a login, you could have something like variable has user logged in equals false. And then once they've logged in, you can set that to true. And then you could have a function like this just saying if the user is logged in, then you call this, execute this bit of code here. And that would mean, they've been logged in, they can navigate through to the home page. And then again, if you want to check if a Boolean is false, you can do an exclamation mark before the Boolean, which basically checks if this Boolean is still set to false. And this would mean here the user is not logged in, and then should be navigate back to the login page of the application. So basically, I think that, this covers Boolean, strings, floats, and integers. Please choose comparison operators. All right, thanks a lot, guys.